Welcome to the City of Eureka's second interactive information gathering workshop for the Waterfront Eureka plan. In addition to tonight's meeting, there will be 5 more public meetings we'll be able to attend either on Zoom like this or in person to provide input and comment. Comments can also be sent directly to planning@ci.eureka.ca.gov. We'll put that in the chat. And the website, waterfronteureka.com, is up and running. At that website, you can provide feedback through the survey or the comment box. We will put the contact information up in the chat so you can review these at your leisure. All right. The agenda for tonight is we're going to introduce some of the planning team, talk about the planning area, the purpose and goals of the Waterfront Eureka plan, the web page. We'll spend the bulk of our time doing some scenario planning and reflecting on what the project area could be, and then we'll wrap up with the project timeline. Presenting tonight with myself, I'm Rose Newberry. I'm the project manager for DUDEC. I'm really excited to be working on this plan. Eureka is one of my favorite places in the waterfront, holds a special place in my heart. We also have Caitlin Castellano here, who's a project manager on the city side, and I'll be answering a lot of the Q&A tonight.
Hello.
All right, most importantly, and first off, we're gonna talk about the planning area. So the commercial bayfront is just waterward, kind of northwest of downtown. And the general plan broke it up into 3 districts, and we're talking about those 3 districts tonight. First, the commercial bayfront is going to be bayside of Waterfront Drive, starting at Madicap Plaza and going all the way to Blue Walks. The second district is Old Town. It runs from about the northwest up here to J Street, just 1 block east of the courthouse. And then the library district, directly adjacent to Old Town, again, is landward of Waterfront between about the courthouse and the Samoa Bridge. The library district has Carson Mansion and, of course, the library in it. Kind of to level set first, we want to talk about the purpose and goals of the plan. So the plan provides a roadmap for development and redevelopment. What this means is the plan isn't going to build anything, provides a framework for private development to build housing, retail, jobs, recreation. For those 3 districts, the commercial bayfront is the largest district and has the most vacant underutilized sites. We'll go through this in a couple of slides so you can see that. Old Town, I think as everyone knows, is the most existing services and businesses. Only about 10% of the parcels are vacant or underutilized. And lastly, the library district is primarily residential with a similar development potential to Old Town, but has a lot more parking. So here again is the project area. This is vacant sites. The yellow sites are just vacant parcels, and the purple are also vacant, but they're constrained. Constrained either by an environmental sensitivity like wetlands or a historic use that had hazardous waste associated with it, so that it may not be able to use for housing or other sensitive uses. Again, you can see most of the vacancy is bayward of Waterfront and the commercial district. These are underutilized parcels. So underutilized means is that the improvements, so the ground up, the buildings, are worth less than the land value itself. Except for single family homes, this generally means that a parcel would likely be redeveloped in the next 50 years as our planning horizon. The largest sites are again in the commercial bayfront, but you can also see there's some sites in Old Town and the library district. This is not guaranteed that a site will be redeveloped, but again, this is the most likely areas for buildings to be improved and redone. Lastly, here's parking, surface parking in the project area. And we both have private surface parking lots in blue and public in orange. We're not the plan is not to take away all of the parking, but we did want to show how much surface parking there is in the project area because potentially structured underground parking could take the place of these lots and new development could happen on them. I also wanted to quickly mention our project webpage. If you take out your phone and point your camera app at this QR code, you can go to the website or you can just go to waterfronteureka.com. At the website, we have an interactive map, and there's also a survey you can take. And if you scroll down to the bottom, you can sign up for future emails to hear about the next in-person or virtual events, just like this one. We had a meeting about 2 weeks ago where we talked to the public. Many of you were there to talk about what the priorities are in the waterfront. And what we did is ask people their general feelings and make these word clouds. So we heard a lot about the commercial bayfront having potential, being underutilized, being beautiful. And from all those responses, what we really got was that the commercial bayfront should be adaptable, revitalized, and that's a really important community asset. Then we talked about Old Town. It's historic, walkable, fun, tourism, food. What we got from that is that it's historic, it's connected, and it's a community hub. And lastly, the library district. Again, we're seeing potential, historic, residential, also a feeling of needing more safety. So what we got from that is needs to be safe, primarily residential, and there's a lot of opportunity there. So from that, what we're doing tonight is some scenario planning. So to think about the future of the planning area, we came up with 3 different scenarios. We won't go forward with any one of these 3 in the planning area, but wanted to bring them to you tonight to start expanding our ideas. And then from the feedback tonight, if there's some other both in-person and virtual events, we'll be selecting one preferred scenario for the plan. You can go to vivabox.com and enter the ID. Nick is going to put that in the chat for you. Or again, you can take out your phone and scan this QR code and you'll get there on your phone. The 3 features we chose were managed retreat, tourism and visitor serving, and complete communities. And I'll go through what those 3 scenarios are as we move through them. I'm going to give everyone a second here to get on to the VBox app. If you're having any trouble, you can use the Q&A or the chat to let us know. We'll try to help you out. All righty, on to the fun stuff. That first scenario is managed retreat. So the idea behind managed retreat was really limiting development in civil rights hazard areas and intensifying development in other areas. One of the key goals of this plan is to build 115 housing units. So it can't happen in the bayfront, where can it happen? What this might look like is open space and marshland in the waterfront trail and commercial bayfront, and then higher and intense density in Old Town and the library district. To imagine this scenario, our urban designer drew some sketches of what this could look like. These are conceptual, but we will be looking at them tonight. But I want to remind everyone, the plan is not building anything. It's providing the guidelines that private development can come in. I still wanted to see what that might look like. And also in talking about managed retreat, wanted to bring up the civil rights hazard areas. This represents 6.5 feet of civil rights. So this is the worst that could happen before 2100. So it's not what's happening tomorrow. And I really want to kind of level set with what potentially could be happening. The dark blue is standard high tide. So mean high water, higher high water. So this happens once a day again in 2100, given the worst scenarios. Spring tides happen a few times a year. King tides happen once a year. And then the 100-year storm in the light teal. And as you can see, it's really impacts commercial bayfront, waterfront drive, acts as kind of a secondary seawall. There's parts of Old Town too. So again, limiting development or new development in these areas would be the idea, and also creating kind of flexible recreation uses that can stand getting wet some of the time. So again, here we're going to walk through what this might look like. So in the commercial bayfront, we imagine this might look like open space and marshland to accommodate Silver Rise with a trailhead and adaptable public space. Maybe something like this. See active recreation, signage, and an area that can handle being inundated some of the time. In Old Town, like we were saying, if you can't build in Bayfront, you're going to have to be higher density in Old Town in the library district. So here we're thinking about something like this. High density mixed use to accommodate development outside the Silver Rise hazard area. This has the first floor with commercial, and then 5 stories of residential uses above. So much more dense than the other scenarios talking about, simply because it's a receiving area for the Silver Rise hazard areas. And then for our third district, the library district, again, denser development to accommodate the Silver Rise hazard areas. In general, the library district, based on our initial visioning, is less dense than Old Town, but this would still be more dense than the library district in similar scenarios. So something like this, higher density housing. So this is 4 stories of housing to accommodate the lack of development in Silver Rise sea level rise hazard areas. All right, we're gonna spend a while on this slide to make sure everyone can get their bearings. But in the VBOX app, we'd like you to enter what about this managed retreat scenario that you like. Things to reflect on, maybe the height of the buildings, the form of the buildings, how they look, how they feel, the streetscape, the uses themselves, or the general concept behind the idea of managed retreat, the idea of densifying Old Town and Library to give some breathing room to commercial bayfront and accommodate for Silver Rise. In the VBOX app, you can type as much as you want, and we're going to show those results as they come in. So Nick, will you launch that? And as people type, show them what people are saying about the managed retreat scenario. And while Nick is launching that again, flexible uses that can get wet, commercial bayfront that can handle, the periodic high tides and king tides, and then Old Town Library, denser development, especially for housing. All right, Nick, do you want to pop up those results? There we go. All right, we'll give, I see 6 below 14 have responded. We'll give everyone another minute. Oh, and I forgot to mention, you can edit your response. You see that in the app if you want to add something. All right. Fantastic. We'll have a few more opportunities like this in the plan. And then if you after this meeting have more notes, you can always email them on the plan website or in the survey. Nick, if you could leave that open while I walk through the next slides, if anyone wants to edit, and then we'll close when we get to the next question. All right, our second of 3 scenarios is tourism and visiting services. So this is a focus on bringing uses that serve tourists to the plan area. This would be spreading out the density in all areas, so a little bit more density in the commercial bayfront and not limiting it, but easing the pressure on Old Town and the library district. And the 3 envisioning we saw for this are a hotel and conference center on the bayfront, art gallery, live work units in Old Town, small hotels, bed and breakfasts, boutique restaurants, and housing in the library district. And again, if anyone's I'm seeing more participants on the meeting than I am in VBox, which is okay. You don't have to be on the VBox, but if you're having any issues, please add it in the chat if you would like to be using that app and you're not currently. But we'll go through the scenarios now. So for commercial bayfront, tourism and visitor serving will be a hotel and a conference center. Something like this. Again, really focusing on those tourism uses. It's, I think, important to note that the tourism visiting serving use is the most consistent with the Coastal Act, and the Coastal Commission, which has to approve the local coastal plan that needs to be consistent with, is very much prioritizes visitors and tourism to California's bayfront and waterfront areas. So if we're doing a hotel and conference center in the bayfront, what would we do in Old Town? Old Town, we envision some art galleries and live work residential uses. Something like this. Again, maybe some housing above. This would be a live work unit, so the artist would live up here and then have gallery space or retail. You know, they could do jewelry, this industrial mixed use, but again, really being a retail and visitor serving area. This could be visitors both from far away or people live in other places in Eureka and are going down to the waterfront to shop and dine. And then the library district, maybe a bed and breakfast, a restaurant, and then again, housing above. So all these scenarios have housing. They look a little different depending on the scenario. You can see this is definitely a little bit lower density than we were seeing in managed retreat, simply because the housing goals can be spread out in this scenario. Right, similar activity on VBox. Nick, if you'll close the old and refresh this one. Thinking about what you like about tourism visitor serving. This could just be the idea of uses being oriented towards visitors. Again, visitors can be from far away, tourists to Eureka, or Eureka residents that don't live in the waterfront. Also thinking about how tall the buildings are, the relationship to the street, the form, anything that you like about this scenario that you think we should take in moving forward. And Nick will launch that poll and we can watch those results come in. And again, if you're having any issues, I will watch the chat and the Q&A while Nick handles the polls, so we can get you keyed in. So 5 responses so far. It's a good time to remind everyone that these comments are great, and that the purpose of this is not to select one option, but to pick the favorites of everything and move forward with a different and custom preferred scenario for the planning area. And that know that none of the uses are mutually exclusive. So we don't have to, we can have, I'm saying, liking having a conference center, but still wanting the high density housing. It's definitely a solution we can go for moving forward. So again, not selecting one, but these are awesome responses. Give everyone another minute. And then I saw a question in the chat about how we're collecting data. We will definitely move forward with these responses that we're getting tonight. But there's going to be, like I said, 5 more opportunities, both in person and virtual. So the responses from tonight will be added to responses from the survey and those additional public meetings. If you want to be the first to hear about the next virtual and in-person meetings, please go to the website, waterfronteureka.com, and get yourself added to the mailing list. And there's many ways to participate. If you're not having success tonight with the VBox app, or you have a neighbor that can participate, there's going to be, both the website and then other public meetings. All right. I'm going to switch back to the presentation. All right, and our last scenario of the 3 is complete communities. This is places where people can live, work, and shop. So the idea right now is that there's a lot more jobs than there are housing options in the Bayfront. So thinking about both adding housing to the Bayfront, which is a primary goal of the plan, but also providing resident serving uses. So similar densities that you were seeing in the last tourist serving scenario, but thinking about uses that are important for people that live there and being able to do your daily errands without having to leave the waterfront. What this might look like in commercial Bayfront. Mixed use, retail, and housing. So things like a bakery and other everyday uses with housing above. In Old Town, maybe a small grocery store with residential on top. Again, so you're seeing a little bit less density than that managed retreat scenario. Both those everyday uses, maybe some underground parking. And then in the library district, got some row homes with accessory commercial uses. So accessory commercial uses are uses that seem residential and their impact to the community. So not retail, but like a daycare or sometimes some cosmetology uses where it's not causing a lot of traffic on the street and really blends well with housing. Often people live they use part of their area for living and part of it for their commercial use. Imagine someone using their living room for daycare and living in their home the rest of the time. So that way you get, again, 3 stories of housing and then some additional kind of everyday uses, but not a lot of retail. All right, and then so the last question like this, although there'll be some more interactive feedback during the presentation. Thinking about what about this scenario, you like either the idea of resident serving uses, again, the form of the buildings, the height, the streetscape, anything like that. I'll hand over to Nick to launch that poll and share his screen again. I think we can kind of speak to the sketches and what we think is going to be implemented by Courtyard Development. So I think it's a good point. The plan, again, does not build the conference center, right? Does not build the housing. What it does is it provides the framework to make it easy and attractive for developers to do this. So we're just showing what the standards could look like. And then thinking about economic development and how to attract this development. All right, we'll give everyone one more minute and switch to our next activity. All right. And then our last question, this is a little bit easier. It's a multiple choice question. Of the three, which do you think is the best fit? So if we were going to use one as our primary base to start developing off of and picking and choosing the things that the community liked from the other ones, which is the best fit? Which should we primarily focus on? Manage retreat, those seal rise, letting seal rise, inundate some areas, and doing flexible uses while identifying others, focusing on tourism, or focusing on having a complete community for people to live and work and grocery shop all on the waterfront. So Nick will launch that poll again. Awesome. We'll see what else chimes in, but I think we're seeing a pretty resounding complete communities with managed retreat, not a very close second. Again, it's important to mention that if complete communities is the base, we keep hearing that there are definitely elements of the other two that can still be achieved, right? Being able to put those flexible and what I'm calling wet uses, things that can handle that semi-regular inundation, those can happen along with having a grocery store. They're not mutually exclusive. So we'll be taking that all into consideration. All right. I think we're all in the VBox app. If you need it again, it's right here. We're going to switch gears. Now we're going to be looking at the following slides, potential building types. So these will be different heights and styles. And then it's going to be a simple multiple choice on which district you would think that these would be suitable for. All right, and the first one. All right, so for the first thing we're looking at is a single family home with an ADU. An ADU is an accessory dwelling unit. What that means is single family home came first, really standard single family home. And after it was built and lived in, there was an additional dwelling unit built on the property. So some examples are a detached granny unit behind a property in a backyard. Those are pretty popular in a lot of jurisdictions. Another example here we have is a single family house with they made a unit above the garage. And again, they can be detached and next to them. So the question we have here is, where would you like to see more of this type of housing? And you can select as many as you want, up to 3 or none for where this should go. Nick, can you launch that poll and start sharing your screen, please? All right. None is the most popular, with library being a close second. That makes it, the library is definitely the most residential and most single family housing. All right. So all the remaining questions will be really similar to this. Again, the type of housing and where you think it should go. Now looking at duplexes, triplexes, fourplexes, the duplex on the screen and a fourplex here. A fourplex is usually an existing larger building that is divided up into either smaller units, or even I've seen, especially in Arcata, where there's a lot of HSU students divided into smaller rooms. And then a duplex is purpose-built. Fourplexes can be too, but do a sort of thing, purpose-built 2 units that are sharing a wall. These often look like single-family homes, or even used to be single-family homes, and now are accommodating twice or 4 times the amount of families it used to. Can be really helpful for smaller families, single students to live in. So again, the question is, where would you like to see more of this type of housing? Pick up to 3 of the districts, and of course, you can also answer none. I'll get over to Nick again to share the results. And you can select as many as you would like. I am going to share my screen again. All right, now we're getting to some denser housing. Thinking about mid and high-rise housing. I'm thinking about 3 to even 7 or 8 stories for the high-rise, and where that would be appropriate. I'm going to give it over to Nick again to share his screen and the results. Right, so we're starting to see some different results here. Definitely pushing density in just in more areas in general. Seems like this is more popular than the less dense options. But also starting to see some answers for Old Town and commercial bayfront. Give everyone a little bit more time. And again, if you have friends and neighbors who weren't able to attend, or you are watching this recording on YouTube after the fact, please go to the website. We have some similar questions in our survey for those that could not participate in the meetings. And then all of these results will be conglomerated with the results we get at the next in-person meetings and then for future virtual meetings. All right, the next type of building we're looking at is a courtyard building. So this is the idea of apartments, usually not very high density, 2 or 3 stories, or even I've seen single studios around a shared courtyard. So you get some open space, not hugely dense, but some apartment uses. And so the courtyard here and here. And here's an example from Eureka. All right. I will give it over to Nick again to share his screen. Not for the library district, a little bit more for commercial bayfront. Give everyone another minute. All right, I'm going to share my screen again. Got a couple more of these. Next is a townhome or a row house. You saw a couple of these in the scenarios. Again, shared walls, usually about 2 or 3 stories. Denser, but doesn't look terribly different from a single family home. All right, I'll go to Nick to launch the poll. Definitely seeing some themes here. I'll let more people pull in, but seeing a lot more of the higher density and again, the Bayfront and Old Town and these lower, but more dense single family homes in the library district. Right. And now thinking about these live work units, industrial lofts. We looked at some of these for Old Town in the scenarios, and the idea compared to that accessory commercial use is that use more retail on the bottom floor, but still have housing. A lot of this would definitely be, again, retail serving and really for artisans, but more of a intensive use than, let's say, a lawyer or a daycare. And I'll get over to Nick to share his screen. This is our last one. We'll look at our schedule and then go to Q&A. Around another minute, and then we'll go over the schedule and open up for Q&A. So I think as it's on the chat, where are we going from here? So as you can see, this is our second of 5 public meetings, and these are kind of our tentative dates about when we're thinking about going back out to talk to people again. Future meetings will both be happening virtually and in person, so there's gonna be a lot of opportunities to provide feedback as we move through the plan. I think it's also important to show that we're working through the conceptual design scenarios right now. And then going to be building the bulk of the plan, the design standards during the next meetings and more feedback. And then there'll be time to respond to those ideas in the draft plan. So the next steps from the planning side are creating a preferred scenario, so thinking about what people would like and dislike about all 3 of these, and then developing in those rules and those standards so development like this could happen and could happen more easily in Eureka. And that's how we would think about encouraging it to happen, is to not putting a lot of development barriers to it, but making it affordable for developers to come in to build these sorts of things. And then our last slide before Q&A. It's a reminder to take the survey on the website. It's waterfronteureka.com. You can sign up for the email list there to get reminded of future in-person and virtual meetings. You can submit more comments there. You can watch this all over again at the end of when it gets posted to that website. So please use that as your hub of information, all things Waterfront Eureka. You can get in contact with us there, and then make sure to send your friends there as well. We're seeing some Q&A come in, and so myself and city staff will answer that live, and then we'll get everyone out of here in about 10 minutes. Thank you so much. As a reminder, you can use the chat or the Q&A to put a question now, and city staff and myself will try to answer them at the best of our abilities. You can also raise your hand if you have questions. You see the raise hand button, and again on your phone, that is *9 if you want to speak out loud.
So we do have a couple questions in the Q&A. The first one is, what models from other communities have been considered? I like the mix of temporary and permanent vendors found in Seattle's Pike Place for the commercial waterfront. Also preserve gathering spaces in that area. Caitlin, did you want to answer that?
Yeah, I wasn't sure if maybe Rose wanted to answer that since her design team came up with it. But I think really we've been considering our own community historically, how it had been. So I think that was the biggest inspiration for the scenarios. And by all means, those are great ideas. I think the city is looking into a mix of temporary uses along the waterfront in the interim. But I would say the biggest thing is the scenarios are developed from our own historic past here. Yeah,
and I can jump in because it was our urban designers. So we were looking at kind of those bigger banner waterfronts, but then trying to right size them for Eureka based on the current inland code and the general plan. So the specific plan, it's smaller than the general plan, and it needs to conform with those ideas. So thinking about the uses from other banner waterfronts, but then how does the sizing and massing go with the general plan? So I think Kaelin's completely right. Really thinking about what the unique considerations are. I think we all know that Eureka is really unique and hard civil rights questions to answer compared to other jurisdictions. So it's really a mix of what we've seen in other developments, kind of what the best practices are for waterfront planning, and then right sizing it for the city and the city's goals. And also the Coastal Commission, I don't talk about them much, but the Coastal Commission and their goals as well.
And then can everybody hear me?
Yes.
So this is Miles. There are plans that are going to be going in front of council for some temporary uses on C to F. That's going to come forward to council likely in the first meeting in July, which I believe is July 5th. If not that meeting, it'll be at the July 19th meeting. So there are thoughts and proposals for temporary outdoor uses along the waterfront that's going to be coming in front of council soon.
The next question is, how is underground parking feasible in these low-lying coastal areas?
Yeah, I don't necessarily think it would be underground here. It would be parking over podium. Especially since, as you saw in the previously in the presentation, that by 2021, half of Old Town is probably going to be inundated in water as well. So with the water table close to the bay, I think maybe we shouldn't have said underground parking. Really, it's over podium parking, right? The first floor parking. But who knows, maybe in the library district, someone could do underground because there is quite a bit of elevation change up in the library district compared to the Bayfront and Old Town.
Yeah, and I was going to say the same thing. There are areas at a little bit higher level, but higher elevation. But I will say that I'm from San Diego originally, and there are underground parking spaces. It's expensive. They have to pump water, and there are examples of it working, but I wouldn't likely recommend that because of the high maintenance cost.
Yeah, I think the last thing to say on the parking is that there are design standards, and our urban designer is a big fan of them, so we know how to rate them, that still above ground parking, but it's not taking your first floor away as far as kind of visitor use. We don't want people to be looking at parking. And so there's ways to design parking inside and around buildings that still preserves that pedestrian feel, So yes, we should have said underground parking, but those parking solutions would still have an interesting street level view. It wouldn't just be staring at cars.
Our next question is, high quality development is essential, but how do you get developers interested, and how can the developers be confident of usage?
Well, the plan, I think one of the biggest components of the plan is once we have an idea of how we want to see the form, the build form of it and the uses, I think the biggest key component is getting through the permitting process, the CEQA. I think really, if you have a really good plan in place that looks nice, and you getting a lot of the permitting can be really expensive. So a part of this is getting pre-clearance from CEQA, and you know, I know the city of Eureka has an economic development team, and that's been really pushing hard to advertise Eureka, and I think we're an up and coming community, and you know, there's always risk, but I believe that there's a lot of people here that believe in us, and I'm not sure if anyone else wants to add anything.
I can jump in.
I definitely do. Oh,
Miles can jump in.
you go, Rose. I'll go last.
I think something we've really been seeing in other communities as far as uses go, well, you do really want them to be allowed by right. If you look at the existing code, and I have, maybe all the uses we're kind of hearing that people want aren't allowed by right. So you would need a permit, and it's conditional uses, and it's difficult. So making it easier, like Caitlin said. And the other thing is we've seen in other communities this big push for certain types of retail on the bottom floor. And it hasn't worked out, and it's led to some vacancies. So really talking to developers about their ground floor and their public space, and talking through the barriers that other communities have seen about vacancy and the changing economy is really how you get around that, is working with developers and you write your rules to make sure that they will encourage what you want. So that's how we address that, thinking about uses that are flexible and the market has demand for. So not a bunch of empty coffee shops, really getting that development in.
Yeah, and I agree. I think the main purpose of this is to help stimulate development and make it more desirable for people to come to Eureka in order to develop. I would say that we're in a really good spot right now. I've worked here for 16 years, and I haven't seen as much development as we have right now. I mean, we have at least 10 over $10 million projects that are happening in Eureka right now, with Food for People, with the Danco project, with Will Adams project on 4th and E. There's a lot of projects that are happening and a lot of interest in the city of Eureka. I think that's something that the city's done in the past, is go through extremely long processes to see exactly what the city wants or what the political favor wants at a particular time. I think that spending developers' money is difficult to do from a municipal standpoint. And I think that opening it up an RFQ and having people make offers and establishing reviewers of that RFQ to see how it best fits, as opposed to telling developers what exactly we want, is a lot more challenging to get development. I think there's a boatload of potential because of Polytechnic coming in here, not only from Cal Poly Humboldt, but also from interested people who realize the impact that Cal Poly is going to have on this area. So I think this is a really good time to be bringing up these discussions, because we have a lot of potential coming forward soon.
Absolutely. We have 1 minute left, but I want to just echo that between COVID-19 and people moving for jobs in Cal Poly Humboldt, it really is going to be an interesting time in Eureka. I don't know if city staff quickly wanted to answer any of these existing questions or have any closing remarks before we end the meeting.
I don't see any outstanding questions in the Q&A.
All right. We are right at time.
I just want to say one more thing. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
There was 2 questions in there, and I apologize. I can tell you that our planning staff, I mean, right now we have a local coast. There was a question in there about the local coastal plan and what the coastal commission is going to do related to anything that we do in this process. I would say that we've been very adamant about trying to adjust our zoning so that it's more conducive to different uses and so that it allows for development, responsible and sustainable development. And we're hoping that that process of the LCP process comes through and that we're able to do that. I'll also say that the Coastal Commission has not been, there's a lot of rhetoric about how it's been the Coastal Commission's, you know, being in the coastal zone is the reason that stopped everything. I don't think that's the case. I don't think that we would be seeing the development that we have, and the changes that we're proposing in this will allow that development to happen a lot more easily. And so, you know, I think that this is, it has its hiccups because of the process that we're going through, but I think that if we get the right input from the community and we have this set up, it's really going to be a huge benefit to our community. We've seen huge increases in transportation and occupancy tax, huge increases in building permit fees. Things, as much as we hear and we understand the concerns about some of the other issues we have, from a tourism and development standpoint, we're really seeing a lot of good signs coming to Eureka, and I think we need to take this opportunity to take advantage of that. And I'm hoping this process really helps with it.
I think that is a fantastic note to end on. As a reminder, please go to our website, waterfronteureka.com, take the survey, sign up for emails, and that way you'll be notified of our next virtual and in-person events. I really hope to see you soon. Thank you.